Now, we've been talking about industrialization during AP World, and what we're getting to is the idea that most of this money has been private money. In other words, private citizens putting together their own capital to build these factories and factory systems to create these goods. And that is true in the first industrial revolution in Great Britain and the second industrial revolution as it spread into Europe and the United States. Steel, oil, modern day financing. Things are changing, but it's driven off of private equity. However, there are some exceptions, and this is what we're going to talk about today. What are those exceptions when the government got involved with industrialization during this time period, 1750 to 1900? Now, there are two examples that you really want to concentrate on. The first one is in Egypt with Muhammad Ali, and the second is going to be the Meiji Restoration in Japan. So Muhammad Ali in Egypt, he was the governor at a time when it was very tumultuous, and Egypt was a part of the Ottoman Empire. Now, it had needed the British help because of the Napoleonic Wars in 1798 that were affecting Egypt. And so there was a need and a little bit of strength coming from Ali that kind of allowed him to be different than other parts of the Ottoman Empire. And so what Ali did is during this time, as all of this industrialization is starting to expand, he takes the opportunity to do that as well. Because he was growing cotton, he decided to continue and up that amount of cotton production. And then he doubled down and started producing the factories so they could take that cotton and create textiles out of it. And by the 1840s, Egypt looked like it was going to be an industrial power. Egypt wasn't able to hold on to it, and most likely, and it's debated, but one of the reasons is it didn't have access to things like coal and those natural resources to be able to continue this industrialization process. Now, the second example you want to use is the Meiji Restoration in Japan. And honestly, you have to know this because this sets up as Japan becoming the power in Asia that's going to take you all the way through World War II. What happened is Japan was isolated. They were in a feudalistic society, and they were run by the Takagawas, who had consolidated somewhat of power there to take control. However, the United States shows up, and they said, with Commodore Matthew Perry, and they said they wanted to open trade. This was in like 1853. At the same time, Japan saw what was happening in China with the spheres of influence from the Europeans and did not want to lose their culture and the control. So the Meiji Restoration occurred because Japan wanted to keep control of their culture during this time period. They started to industrialize for protection. And so they started to manufacture things like steel. And corporations that we know today as like the Mitsubishi Corporation came about. But what they did is with this industrialization and westernization, they were able to control it and not allow the Europeans to take power and influence it, especially from this standpoint of influencing through Christianity. However, during the Meiji Restoration, understand that Japan also had issues with getting enough natural resources. And so they were going to have to imperialize, which is going to get us into Unit 6. So again, keep that in mind. I'm foreshadowing here. The industrialization set up in Japan through the Meiji Restoration launched in what's going to be imperialization and colonization, because if you're going to be an industrialized nation, you are going to need resources. If you ain't got them, you got to go get them. Now you know your freaking history.